GYMetrix has now measured equipment usage with sensors for over 6.5 million hours and conducted more than 40,000 face-to-face surveys. This data has been analyzed with the most advanced software, and we are sharing this information with you. Hello, I'm Rory from GYMetrix. GYMetrix has now done hundreds of gym studies, and most importantly, we've now done many before and after studies measuring the impact of changes. And it has led to one of the most important discoveries in the fitness industry about the relationship between the amount of equipment a gym has and the number of customers it has. We're calling it the GYMetrix Curve. And if you're an operator, understanding this curve and knowing where you are on this curve could make you a lot more profitable. Firstly, let's start with the axes on the graph. Across the x-axis, we have the quantity of equipment increasing, and up the y-axis we have the quantity of customers increasing. There's three important points on this graph. The first one is recognizing that customers' primary value driver is being able to use gym equipment. This means if there is no equipment, there will be no customers. Then, as the gym starts to increase the quantity of equipment, so too it can increase the number of customers it has. Importantly, a gym cannot grow the number of customers it has beyond a certain point determined by how much equipment it has. This is because as a gym gets busier and busier, if customers walk onto a gym floor and other customers are constantly on the equipment and they cannot access it, they cannot access value from the gym. It is the same as the equipment being removed altogether. However, if there's not a limit on the amount of equipment a gym can have, and it keeps adding equipment, so too, depending on the demand from the catchment area, so too it will increase the number of customers the gym has. This will carry on to the second most important point on this graph, at which point there is diminishing returns. Now, as the gym adds more equipment, there's less and less customers joining, eventually to the third most important point on this graph, where adding more equipment adds no more customers. The customer demand has now been met, so adding more equipment doesn't add any more customers. GYMetrix can predict where a gym is on this curve, and this is actually what led to us discovering this curve. So, gyms that have very low levels of availability and have a limit on the quantity of equipment they've put in are at this point on the curve. An example of this would be Glasgow Life's Gorbals gym, where we did a study there. It had very low levels of availability, and essentially this acts as a cap on the number of members it could have. When these gyms expand, they grow very quickly. For example, Gorbals went from 45 pieces of equipment to approximately 90 pieces of equipment, and it doubled its membership base. So it went from here to here. At the same time, gyms that have very high levels of equipment availability are at this point on the curve. Once again, it is only through doing studies that we have learnt this relationship. Gyms that are at this point on the curve can make substantial reductions in the quantity of equipment that they have, and it makes no difference to the number of customers that they have. The only difference that it makes is they reduce their cost base and they make themselves a lot more profitable. These operators would do a lot better rationalizing the amount of equipment that they have and investing in secondary value drivers. Secondary value drivers are things like staff or change rooms. If we look at the graph here, this is the effect that adding staff or change rooms would have to the GYMetrix curve. It means at the same amount of equipment, there is more of an appeal to customers. It would appeal to more customers if change rooms were added or staff were added at the same quantity of equipment. Importantly, with secondary value drivers, if all of the equipment is removed, they have no value. Having change rooms or staff attached to a gym that has no equipment serve no purpose. Now looking at individual equipment types on a gym floor, the same curve applies, except now we're looking at just the demand levels and quantity for a single equipment type. Let's look at benches and cross trainers. In many of the studies that GYMetrix has done to date, benches have been undersupplied. They are at this point on the curve. When the operator expands the number of benches and we come back to that gym and we remeasure that gym, the total time spent on benches has increased. It's moved from this point to this point on the curve. This is more demand coming in for benches, and this draws more customers into the gym. At the same time, if we look at cross trainers, they're at the opposite end of the curve. So we're finding many operators can reduce the number of cross trainers that they have. When we come back and we remeasure that gym, the total time spent on cross trainers has not changed. All that has changed is the operator has spent significantly less on cross trainers and is now more profitable. To optimize a gym's equipment mix, it's important for the operator to understand what the level of customer demand is for each of the equipment types. If the operator provides too little, they end up strangling customer growth. Customers stop coming to gyms when they can't get on their favorite equipment. On the other hand, they can reduce the quantity of equipment where they're providing too much for customer demand, and this can make a substantial reduction in their costs. I hope you found this interesting and informative. Thank you.